That's good.
Welcome everyone to season 3, episode 115 of the Premier Pod. I'm your host Yash Bika, joined by my co-host Tyler Chan. And in this episode, we've got some pretty interesting and some pretty insightful discussion points about some of the bigger news that was happening around the Premier League and just a bit outside the Premier League, and bringing in a little bit of business expertise for some of the topics, or one of the topics. But to get things started, we have to bring it to probably the biggest game of the weekend. Like we mentioned last week, was the EFL Cup final. It was Tottenham's chance to finally get their hands on their first silverware since 2008, I believe, was their last time they won a trophy under interim manager, 29-year-old interim manager Ryan Mason. But unfortunately, Spurs fans, as you guys know, the final did not turn out very pretty for you guys. You guys ended up losing 1-0, but it was a City masterclass. Tottenham, from basically the start of the whistle, did not look like they were into the game. They could never get any of their star players on the ball. It was just pretty much just sit back and hope you could hit City on a counterattack. It didn't work. City were the dominant team in this game, and they thoroughly deserve the victory. And Man City have won their 4th EFL Cup in a row, which is pretty crazy stat. But the bigger news that came out of that was the state that Tottenham Hotspur are in right now, because as we mentioned last week, the timing of Jose Mourinho's firing was really weird. And, we don't know for sure whether it had to do with him not participating and not wanting to bring his players out because of the Super League. But you fire the manager that is probably one of the best one-off managers of history, of European coaching history, and you're fire him before a cup final match against one of his biggest rivals, one of the guys that he has shown that he can outclass and out-tactic for one of these one-off games. You fire him and you bring in inexperienced 29-year-old manager to basically be on the interim basis. And it was not a good look for Tottenham, because as soon as the whistle was done, the full-time whistle came, all the news and speculation came on Heung-min Son, Harry Kane, and just the entire Tottenham Hotspur squad. And Tyler, I got to ask you this. Do Tottenham need to go full-on rebuild mode going into next season?
At this point, I don't think they have a choice, because you really think that Harry Kane or Heung-min Son is going to want to stay at Tottenham based on, it really would be based on who their next manager is. Because if it's Ryan Mason, no, I don't see it. I don't see him staying. And it really is just based on who has enough money to get them out of that club. Because, like Man City, they need a striker. So I could see them, trying to snag Harry Kane. And then for Heung-min Son, who knows where he might go. But, the tears from his face on the pitch afterwards from Heung-min Son, just crying on the pitch, getting comforted by Man City players. Sung-min was just thinking, he's like, please God, Man City, just buy him, and then I'll switch allegiances from Tottenham to Man City, because I'm sick of being a Tottenham fan. Just only disappointments.
Oh my
and I'm
goodness.
just like, Spurs gonna Spurs, mate. This is what you picked. He's like, I hate this. Even our good friend listener Galen, he put a little post in our group chat saying, like, man, why can't Tottenham win anything? I'm just like, I'm so sorry, but I really think it's time to rebuild, because literally there wasn't an answer that can even call from on the bench. Like Bale, he should have started, and they should have went way more attacking.
Didn't even start either.
Mm-hmm. And I was like, they had somebody.
And Ndombele didn't start as well. And, he's not like a full-on attacking midfielder, but he's still much more creative than Harry Winks and who else did they have? Sissoko. I think they started Sissoko and Harry Winks.
I think Sissoko got subbed on, but like he ultimately was the...
Oh, it was Lo Celso, I think. I think it was Lo Celso. Yeah.
But Sissoko ultimately was the one who lost his man, Laporte, in the corner kick, and then he lost his man he was marking, and then Laporte got the header goal to win, of all people. Emerick Laporte gets the game winner. But literally, I feel like Tottenham, they're starting 11 for that game. They're already set to lose. Like they already lost the game before they even got on the pitch because of just the mentality. Like
it's so uninspired.
It was so uninspired. It was very defensive. They had 2 shots on target the whole game, or 2 shots in general the whole game, while City had around 20. And like literally, I don't know where they can go from this. Like they literally, if they bring in a new player, they bring in someone else to help bolster the squad. Most of the players, as we mentioned before, like Ish and I mentioned on previous pods, they're in their prime already. Like Heung-min Son, he's already in like his late 20s. So is Kane. And most of the other players there on purgatory, like Dele Alli, he's also in his prime. Gareth Bale's already past his prime, as we like to already say. And some of the other key players have already left.
Yeah.
You got Christian Eriksen, he's out. And he would have been like a key player that could have definitely helped rejuvenate this team and like made a comeback. And, Vertonghen's out. So literally all these players that was on the main Tottenham squad, I felt like their window of 2017 to 2019 was like their window to maybe win one trophy. Like they missed it. So I feel like at this point, they should probably sell. I know it sucks. They should probably sell at least Son, I think, just to get some money and then maybe start rebuilding with some new youth players. But at that point, it's kind of a risk because like you don't know which youth players at this point with the pandemic and like less statistics and like it's a little harder to scout these days to see like who would be the next, Son replacement. But, if you get rid of Kane, I feel like it's a bigger statement because then he's your talisman. If you get rid of him, then you change the whole face of the club because everything goes through Kane and the whole club definitely feels that it steps down a level when Kane's not in the pitch. So, Son, he can replace Kane every once in a while, but, you definitely feel the hole when Kane's not there.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think you brought up a good point about 2017, 2019 kind of being that window because that season or those couple seasons, Spurs were on the brink of doing something really special. I mean, they got all the way to a Champions League final under Pochettino. They got to a FA Cup semifinal with Pochettino. They were really close to winning the Premier League at one point. I mean, the year Leicester won it, they had a fighting chance of maybe overtaking them to win the title. It didn't happen. And as much, I guess like the beauty of the Spurs squad from that time was that a lot of their core key players were in their, they were young. They were kind of going into their prime. And then now, as we look into 2021, that same Spurs squad that a couple years back was kind of going into their prime, they're all essentially in their prime or they're really old at this point, like 34, 33, like Alderweireld in his late, early 30s, but kind of decreasing in quality. Sissoko kind of going down in quality. Harry Kane and Son being at their prime. Lloris is getting up there in age. Eric Dyer not really living up to his potential that we saw. Harry Winks not really living up to his potential. Dele Alli kind of hitting a plateau in his career. All these players that we kind of thought were going to take a next step or hold their longevity, it just hasn't proved to be the case. And for Tottenham, they're kind of in this hole, which I agree that they have these two mega stars that are basically carrying the club at this point, and both those stars kind of know that this club or these quality of players around them aren't good enough to help them get to winning a trophy. And now it'll be a game of, do both of these players kind of force their way out of the club, like sort of like Christian Eriksen kind of did, where he was just like, I want out, I want a new challenge. But Daniel Levy kind of being I wouldn't say a cheapskate, but being a little tight with the money, he'll definitely wouldn't let these guys leave unless it's the right price. And it's just kind of shocking because you could ask probably any Spurs fan, this is probably their best, for these past couple of years have kind of been like their best Spurs squad that they've seen in a very long time, but they haven't won a trophy during that time. And that was the biggest thing. They brought in Mourinho, they sacked Pochettino to win a trophy, and they gave up on Mourinho within a season and a half. So I just don't understand the Daniel Levy way of thinking right now, because you did everything to sack Pochettino to get Mourinho, then you sack him before a cup final, and now you're left with this big hole of these random hodgepodge group of players that it just doesn't seem right anymore. Like the spirit that Tottenham kind of mojo groove that Pochettino had built is all just gone now, completely gone.
Mm-hmm. And you also have to remember that Mourinho plays in a very unique way. Like the way he sets up his team is very different from most other people, most other coaches, most other managers. So if at this point you have to rebuild, because the way that most other managers will, set up their team and the chess pieces they have with the players that are available to him are going to be a lot different from, traditional teams. Because it's going to be like, all right, now we have Højbjerg, we have Harry Winks, we have, Eric Dyer. They all kind of do the same thing, but usually they all start. And at this point, I'm kind of thinking back to like 2011, 2012, when the Tottenham team was like William Gallas in the back. You got Rafael van der Vaart, Luka Modric, you got Gareth Bale on the rise, and like Peter Crouch, Shout out Peter Crouch. But literally that team, it had a lot of potential, but it was a solid team. Like it would be, trying to chase Europa League, never really make it into the top four. But at the same time, it was still like it wouldn't really surprise you too much. And like it was like just like a consistent, solid team. And I feel like this Tottenham team is so volatile. Like it could be really good, but also it could be so bad. And it's kind of like how Yush describes his Man U squad. It's just like you don't know if they're going to win 5-2 or going to lose 1-0. And literally for this team, I feel like they need to get that consistency back to like at least be somewhat predictable and not be as volatile in their results. Because right now, as Yesh and I said, there's really only two big stars on the team, and that's Son and Kane. And unless Daniel Levy just happens to find $1 billion somewhere just lying around to replace almost the rest of the squad and just kick out all the deadwood, as Yosh would like to say.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's any hope that they can really make a second wave run to, find a trophy, because I feel like this might have been it. This EFL Cup, this might have been like that last hurrah. And I think maybe that's why Daniel Levy decided just to sack Jose Mourinho now, because he thought, what does it even matter if we win this trophy? Like, I think after that, this is the peak. This is the last peak before it just dies. Like when you're watching one of those hospital series where it's like you see like a dying patient and then you just see like the little heartbeat sensor. It was just like beep, beep. And then right at the very end, rather than say the last words, it's like goodbye. And it's just like beep. It's just flatlined. Literally, this was their last beep. And I think that's why Daniel Levy might have just been like, it doesn't even matter at this point. So I still think he should have just kept Mourinho, but and then pulling Ryan Mason on that's just kind of the worst case. That's being a bad boss.
Yeah.
I feel like
you gave the keys to like a very inexperienced guy that's just like who's loved the club. Like he's a boyhood fan, been there since like in the academy ages, but then giving him the keys with like very limited resources and basically 8 games left to play. And then you put him, his second game in charge is against one of the best managers in the world.
Mm-hmm. It's like, how are you supposed to do well in that at that point? You need a miracle. And even the first half going in 0-0 into halftime was a miracle in itself. Mm-hmm. But I mean, for a scoreline of 1-0, it's kind of impressive. But at the same time, when you look at, if you watch the game itself, it was clearly offense versus defense the entire 90 minutes, basically.
Yeah.
It's just like, if
City
you look
could
at
have had a ton, but their finishing was a bit off.
Yeah, their finishing was kind of garbage. Surprisingly. It was like, what happened? They didn't have their shooting boots on. And lucky for Tottenham, it kind of kept the game somewhat interesting for them, but it was no chance for Spurs. So that's why I feel like right now, if you even think to next season, who could they even bring in? Like I don't really see a way that this team can be saved. I feel like even Arsenal have more of a chance to improve next season because they have a youth foundation of Bukayo Saka. They have Emil Smith Rowe. They have Pepe is starting to get a little better, and he's not in his prime either. So,
Partey. They have good starting 11 pieces throughout the squad. They just need a little bit more talent. But Spurs, I feel like it's just so top heavy, where it's just you have 2 stars in the front half, and then that's it. And then you have Lloris, but then the back line is a mess because Reguilon hasn't really. I mean, he's shown flashes of like, okay, this guy can be pretty decent as a fullback, but really hasn't done it that much. And then Doherty hasn't been injured, but it seems like when Jose Mourinho was there, he still preferred to play Serge Aurier. And then Aurier isn't the most consistent right back ever. And then center back wise, Alderweireld has kind of dipped down in his form. And Eric Dyer, as we've seen, I don't know why everyone keeps playing Eric Dyer. He is just not the move, but I guess the reason you play him is because you have Davidson Sanchez, who's also not very good at as well. So they just have a lot of holes in their team, and it's just kind of crazy because you thought for the longest time that the Spurs squad was perfect, and all they needed was like another manager to kind of just push them to the next level. But it just seems like that extra year or two just finally caught up to a lot of these players, and then their performances just went like shoot, just dipped completely.
It's clearly a problem now when you see your most creative player is Harry Kane and your highest goal scorer is Harry Kane. Like literally, he's just carrying the whole team with Son. It's just them two. So I feel like if there's a team that if they wish they could just sell everyone for market value and just rebuild, I feel like it would be Tottenham. And at this point, with their new manager, they probably are gonna. I think because usually when a new manager comes in, they put in their own not credentials, but like their own tactics, their own influences for what they want from players and what they want or what kind of players they want. So I guess that goes to a good question, Yash. So
Yeah.
who do you think will be their next manager? Because in my opinion, I don't think it's gonna be Ryan Mason.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I don't think Daniel Levy can go into next season and be like Ryan Mason is the guy, because I think he just needs to build up more experience, but he has shown in this short period that I just don't think he's the guy. Nagelsmann is no longer available because he's going to Bayern Munich, but there was a couple of names that have kind of been thrown around, not official reports, but kind of people kind of talking some interesting names that I think would be maybe worth a shot. Brendan Rodgers, current manager of Leicester City, Scott Parker, current manager of Fulham, and then Eddie Howe, who used to be the former manager at Bournemouth, are some interesting names that I think could potentially come in to Tottenham. I think Brendan Rodgers might be a bit of a stretch, because if you're honestly comparing both the clubs, you'd have to say Leicester City is in a much better position, not just table wise, but longevity wise right now, because of the core that they have and the way they kind of just do their entire club, where they can sell their big name players for a ton of money and then bring in someone just as good or even better than the person that they just sold. So the way they kind of do the business, it seems like Brendan Rodgers kind of has a perfect mesh of like expectation and the type of players that he has. It's like the perfect mesh right now. Scott Parker, I think, would be a little interesting, because he used to play at Tottenham, but he is a young manager. The way he plays obviously is a little bit much more progressive. He has a clear way of playing. Right now, kind of struggled at Fulham because maybe the quality of players isn't there, but what he has, Scott Parker at Tottenham, there's a chance for something special to go there. And then Eddie Howe, I've always been a fan of Eddie Howe. I thought that maybe a couple seasons back that he could have had a shot to go to some of the big boys in the Premier League, kind of missed that opportunity, and then obviously got relegated with Bournemouth. But Eddie Howe plays a really fun, exciting way of football. Very attacking, very front forward, high press. A very fun way, enjoyable way of watching football. The exact opposite of Jose Mourinho. But if you bring in Eddie Howe, it's going to be definitely much more of a project. Let him build something and then see where it takes you. Sort of what they did with Pochettino when he came in. So I definitely think they have to go to the route of a manager that is going to be on the project side. They can't go for a quick fix manager.
Mm-hmm. Because also they don't have the financial abilities to just have a quick fix manager, because usually those kind of clubs you see from like Bayern Munich, or Bayern Munich's kind of different because they have like a good foundation in itself. So manager, I feel like, doesn't have to do too much.
Real Madrid did that before they had
Real
Zidane.
Madrid,
like just cycling through. Barcelona cycled through managers.
Mm-hmm. And look at what's going on with them. At least they're in millions and millions and hundreds of millions of euros in debt, but they can still continue to do it because they're one of the biggest clubs. Well, Tottenham, they're a big club in England, but in the world, maybe top 20, maybe top 30. But I think if I were to choose for Tottenham, there's also Mauricio Sarri, who is going to be.
But I don't really like that move. He's like you're going to like. Tottenham fans already did not like the way Jose Mourinho played. They're not going to enjoy Sarri ball, which is boring balls.
He wins games. That's the thing.
He does, but it's not fun to watch. It's not fun to watch. Ask any Chelsea fan.
I feel like Sarri also is more of a manager that you can kind of slot in, and he's not a project manager. I feel like he's more of a manager that's kind of like win now, and Tottenham need more of a project manager. I feel like Scott Parker and Eddie Howe are probably like the better two to choose from. I think if I were to pick, Scott Parker, he has a history with the club. He used to be a Tottenham player, and he did a pretty decent job bringing Fulham from relegation, getting relegated with them, but bringing them back up from promotion.
He did bring them back up and everything.
From a miracle, I would say, because I wasn't expecting them to get.
Yeah, it was like a Tom Kearney, like random free kick, just like somehow went through like the Brentford goalkeeper. It was like a miracle free kick.
Oh yeah, it's like Sam Byram or something.
Yeah, that's who it was. Yeah, miracle free kick that got them into the Premier League.
Yeah, so it's something Yash and I were saying. Like, you make your own luck, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know, Scott Parker.
You're not sold on him.
I'm not sold on him just because I feel like Eddie Howe his resume of just finding consistent success in the Premier League plays different. And he also, Eddie Howe had a much smaller
club
club, and also just transfer budget.
Much brought Bournemouth to the Premier League. I mean, he was their guy for like the longest. He was a young manager too when he came into Bournemouth.
He always looks like he's wearing a racing coat too. It's like just those kind of vibes. So I feel like if there were someone that brings in a culture, like either two would be good. But I feel like Eddie Howe would just have a better roadmap for what to do, and also giving more funding. Joining from Bournemouth to Spurs is going to be really interesting to see. It's like, oh, how is he going to spend the money? Who would he buy?
Yeah,
and
he won't be like relegated to just buying Jordan Ive players of players like Jordan Ive and other players where you're kind of like you can find some hidden gems, like some hidden diamonds, but a lot of times you're just like whiffing at like taking a chance on like certain players that were from the big Premier League clubs that didn't exactly make it and hoping they can make it at your level.
But I would say Eddie Howe, and then maybe we'll see Tottenham do another run in maybe 7 years, maybe a little shorter, 5 to 7 years, but I don't think it's going to be happening anytime soon. I think at this point, as Yoshi and I kind of been alluding, our take is they should probably rebuild. Daniel Levy, missed the window.
It'll be tough because if they miss out on European competition, they're going to be missing out on a ton of money. And obviously they built the new stadium, so they need to. They're kind of in a situation Arsenal was, where even though Arsenal were qualifying for Champions League, they still had trouble funding. The funding of buying new players and such, where they were kind of like a selling club. And now Tottenham, I feel like, are going to be in that position where they now have to be more of a selling club because they just won't have the resources to buy players because of COVID and how it's impacted all clubs, but also they have to pay off the new stadium. So and that's not going to be cheap. So Daniel Levy's got a very big project and task on hand. And I do feel bad for Spurs fans because these past 3 or 4 years, it seemed like, they were going to get there, but then it's not looking likely now. So we'll see where this kind of goes. It's going to be interesting following them for the rest of the season and seeing how they kind of progress and seeing if they can get Europa League. But that will obviously, we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But we wanted to switch it over to a top 4 battle. Well, not exactly top four, but a team trying to get into the top 4. It is Liverpool succumbing again to a late equalizer from another club, and this time it was Newcastle. And for Newcastle, they have a new hero in Tyneside, which is Joe Willock, the Arsenal loanee. He has been coming up clutch. Him and Alex Saint-Maximin have been coming up clutch and basically helping Newcastle secure safety in the Premier League. But Joe Willock scoring once again a late equalizer to make it 1-1 and get Newcastle that draw. But Liverpool, man, they succumb to another late equalizer. And I want to bring this question. I know we brought it up before, but not similar to Tottenham where they need to do a full-on rebuild. But do you think there has to be a bit of rebuilding going on at certain areas of the team, of the starting 11? Or do you feel like the same core 11 can make a run if they all stay healthy next season?
I think the same core 11 can make a run. I think we just need Van Dijk back for sure. Jordan Henderson needs to come back. And then that in itself is defense and midfield all kind of sorted out. Naby Keita, I'm still a little on the fence about him because there's still some talks about him possibly making a move out. But I feel like there's been some talks because like he hasn't really lived up to that £50 million.
I remember when they signed him, I was like, dang, you guys got one heck of a player.
I was like, this guy's gonna be like Conte, except just creative. Not really more defensive, but it just has like some good vibes where he's just going to run around the pitch and then make some magic happen. But that hasn't been the case. He's just been injured most of the time he's been at Liverpool, and then when he does play, it's very minimal. And
what about Ox? Is he? Is there reports on him going on his way out, or do you still prefer to keep him?
I feel like there's certain locker room players that you should keep. I feel like Ox is one of them because he's just all around like a good person that will kind of cheer up everyone else. And even for Keita too, like he's, Mane's good friend. So it's kind of like how Moreno kind of stayed on the team because of Coutinho. But then once Coutinho left, it's like, all right, get Moreno out of here. But for now, I don't think Mane is going to leave. I think we still got him. I think if anything, we just need, as a team, Liverpool needs to get another striker that can
I think you guys need a starting 11 striker. Like you guys got away with going a good 4 or 5 seasons without one, but I think this season has shown that you guys need a legit talisman up there that can be the main goal scorer when everyone else is not firing. I think that's so important to have in a squad.
Because I recently watched a Daniel Sturridge compilation of all the goals he scored at Liverpool, and I was like, man, this guy was just so clinical.
You had him and Suarez.
Yeah, and that was one of my favorite seasons I've ever watched in the Premier League, even though we got second place. But literally, that kind of ferociousness, that kind of, ferocity from just goal scorer just up there. It's like, oh, he's gonna slot it in. That kind of poacher is something that Liverpool's missed for a while. And I feel like Liverpool, most of the time, we don't score that many, straightforward goals compared to, when Daniel Sturridge is on the team and Suarez is on the team. The goals are simple. They're not like spectacular. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Whereas like when you had Daniel Sturridge, like, holy cow, he just chipped a keeper from outside the box, outside the goal box. And then with, Mane, Salah, and Firmino, is a lot more like, not like tiki-taka, but more like, oh, he slotted it in. He just, placed it well. It was just on the simple finesse, things like that. Not really anything that really gets you off your seat. And it's more like easy chances. That's what I should probably describe it as. Whereas from Suarez and Sturridge, you got a lot more of the crazier goals. You get more of the like strikers goals, where it's like Suarez scoring from 40 yards out against Norwich. And you would never really see that. Like, I feel like with Liverpool, you really have to get in the box to take a shot.
Yeah.
Like, you don't really see anyone else on the team taking a shot from outside the box. And it's a little frustrating because like they don't really have that in their lockers. Like, all right, I'm going to just score right now from this angle. I don't even care.
Yeah. Or at least have that confidence. Like one of their players have the confidence to just take a shot, just rip it and see what happens.
So, Salah scores a lot of goals, but at the same time, I'm just like, he's not a striker though. He's not going to be in those same positions. He's just he's a right winger, he's a right forward, he's a false nine. Firmino's also that too. Like Firmino, he's done really well the past few seasons as a false nine, as a pseudo striker, and Cam at the same time. But I feel like right now, some teams have probably like figured him out. He's not really holding the ball as well, retaining the ball as well too. So I think we just really need an extra goal scorer that's up top. That's not Diogo Jota. Diogo Jota, I still feel like should play on a wing because he's really good. It's just he's also not like a consistent goal scorer too. He's not like the Raul Jimenez of his team. It was Raul Jimenez who was the Wolves goal scorer. So
yeah, I
think if he was like a secondary along with like Mane, Salah, and Firmino, like just one of those, like three of those four just playing behind a for sure striker that could get you those goals, like an Erling Haaland or someone like that that's just a pure finisher. Yeah. I think that's what we need. And like I feel like that would like solve most of our issues because defense right now is an issue, but that's because everyone's injured. Once they're back, I feel like that'll come back and that'll fix its own self. With Van Dijk back, Gomez back, Matip back, I think that will resolve itself. And then once Henderson's back in the midfield and Fabinho moves back in the midfield, that'll be fixed as well. But it's just the striker, like these front three, front four with Diogo Jota kind of slotting there every once in a while. That's been a healthy part of the team for most of the season, and yet they're playing like they're the issue.
Yeah.
So I feel like if we can just get a striker up there, that'll just solve it all. But it's just like, who can we buy?
That's what I was gonna say. There's not a lot of top quality strikers available on the market. They're either really young or really expensive, or they're like literally in their prime, and there's no way that team is gonna sell their striker.
Exactly. And also the hard part is that Liverpool, they're not really playing as if they want Europe next year. Like they're not really playing as if they want Champions League, I feel like, because a lot of the chances against Newcastle this past weekend, they should have finished. I'm thinking like they should have finished and at least had 2 or 3 goals. But there's just something about them just wasn't there like that.
Like the seasons before, they were so clinical. They would finish a team off 4-0, 5-0,
exactly.
3-1,
like this game was at home. Like they should have been putting Newcastle to bed. Yeah. But they still gave Newcastle 2 chances after 90th minute. VAR saved us.
One.
Like it should not have been chalked off in my opinion. But Newcastle, like they got lucky and God's gift repaid them with karma in the same game. in the 95th minute or 94th minute at a time. And, it came back to bite us. And I was just like, man, you just can't close out games anymore. And even I'm thinking too, is like, we're using backup players like Kabak and like Fabinho playing our best center back of the season is Fabinho of all people. So it's like, that's already an issue, but we could have scored more and we should have scored more. Like, I don't know why Alan St. Maxim was just causing so much havoc, and he was like the star of the show for that day. Whereas, we had Salah, Firmino, and Mane all play throughout the game, and it was just like we couldn't really unlock them. We had some chances, just couldn't finish.
And I was going to ask this. I know there's been some chatter because when Thiago signed for Liverpool, the hype was around him. Like, this guy was like, oh my gosh, like Liverpool are the champions, and now they just took this next step because they got Thiago. But from an outsider's perspective, I'm not just looking this because I want to hate on Liverpool, but I don't know. I don't know if I've been like the most impressed with Thiago. I know he's had his moments where it's like, oh wow, like he's done like, some really cool stuff. But I feel like a lot of times, at least from an outsider, the way Liverpool have always played for the past couple of seasons is like fast, on the ball, fast. You have your couple moments of possession, but then you're looking to get in behind, get the quick attack going in. But Thiago, I feel like it's the player that he is a maestro in himself, but he is a very, like, he likes to slow the game down and really like slow everything down. But do you feel like he has caused some of the problems for Liverpool because of his style of play of being more of that slowerish, wants to slow the game down and, kind of be that quarterback per se? Like, he likes to dictate everything.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of good teams have someone who sets the tempo. Like at Real Madrid, it was Toni Kroos and even at times Luka Modric. Like, they both kind of are really good at setting the tempo for a game. And then when you go to Bayern Munich, it was, Goretzka and Joshua Kimmich. Like, they can both set the tempo. They can both make their own runs as well. But with Liverpool, usually everyone was just on the same tempo. It was just always high press, go ham, just constantly running. Heavy metal like the whole time. And with Thiago, he really was not that kind of player. He really, as you say, set his own tempo, and it's a lot slower than usually how Liverpool plays. And I feel like we cannot play the same way with Thiago in the team. And it's a way that we usually don't play. But at the same time, a lot of the starting 11 compared to at least the formation, it used to be like a 4-3-3, and now we're kind of switching between a 4-2-3-1 at times and a 4-3-3, but like some of the main people in the middle aren't the same. Wijnaldum's kind of struggling at times.
Oh yeah, like what has he signed a new contract, or is he like? No, he's leaving. Just going to go on a free at this point.
He's leaving for a free at this point. Oh, and
that just sucks. That actually, as a club, that is the worst, because now it's like you can't even get any like money off of him. It's just like this guy's just going to go for free. Yeah,
it's kind of like Thiago coming to us. But
yeah, I guess it just worked out.
It just worked out. But at the same time, Thiago, he's just a little rash at times too. He always gets a yellow every time I see him play. Just like a random, like it's not even like a reason why he had to get the yellow. He just lashed out at someone. It's like, all right, yellow card. It's like, why? So I don't know. It's just it doesn't really seem like a good fit. If I'm being honest, like it just seems like he's a player that got brought into Liverpool, but he's not a Liverpool player still. Like he's just like a good player that still doesn't really know the system that well and kind of does his own thing. Yeah. And with his magic, like he's able to make his own chances for other players and other, things like that. But at the same time, I just feel like he wasn't really a good fit. If this was like a 1-year contract, I feel like I probably wouldn't re-sign him. Like, I feel like I'd rather have Curtis Jones over Thiago at this point.
That is true. He's younger too. Like have a chance to develop him and everything in the system. That is interesting because you guys also have that option with like Kabak, the center back. But I have seen a lot of Liverpool fans on Twitter basically talk about, I don't know why, they really go in on how slow Kabak is. And you've mentioned it before. He's not the quickest, like moving laterally and everything. But
yes.
Would you, because I know it's you have him on loan from Schalke and have a chance to sign him. Would you bring him back, or are you just going to like let him go at the season after this?
That's a big question that a lot of people have been asking on Twitter. And I'm on the train that says no. I kind of don't want him because, let me put it to you this way. He's a good player, but we've still been conceding goals. And it's like, oh, you only conceded 1 or 2. It's like, I don't want us conceding any goals. Like the standard should be with Van Dijk and Joe Gomez, where like we just be getting clean sheets most games.
Yeah.
And for Kabak, we usually concede at least 1. And that's the kind of standard we had back in the days with like Skirtle and Sacco. And I'm like, it's like, maybe we'll only concede 1, but we'll outscore them like 3-1. And I'm like, at this point,
that's funny because that's like my expectation now. It's like, maybe we'll just get away with like scoring. Like we'll concede 1, but maybe we'll score 3, and we'll just win that way.
It's like, no, it's like we should not have that standard. I know he's young, but it's just he reminds me of like Reece Williams, the other youth center back that we had. It's just, I'm like, how are you a professional player, but also so slow motion at times? Or it's just like a player runs past him, and then it's just like 0.5 speed, just moving along. Like he can turn his head. He doesn't even turn his head fast. It's just like, what is happening? It's like, I could run faster than Kabak at this point. It's like, what the heck? So I don't know. There's just something about it where it's just like, it's not on the same level at times. Like he makes some crazy plays sometimes, but at the same time, there's some chances where I'm thinking, I feel like that is not the caliber of player that we should have on the team.
Yeah.
Where it's just like that goal like could have been prevented, or like that goal probably should not have happened at Liverpool.
Yeah.
Like, there should be a player that should be ready to go at this point.
No.
And he'd be like the 5th string if he were to be on the team next year. And people are like, why do we need a 5th string? It's like, clearly we need a 5th string, but
well, you have the youth center back. His name is like Nathaniel Phillips, or is it Nathaniel?
Yeah, Nathaniel Phillips. Yeah. I'd rather have him over Kabak.
Yeah. I would say he's done pretty well what I've seen, games I've seen him play. He's been pretty decent. So
he's a decent 4th string, and I'd keep him. But Kabak, I would save the money, not get him. And, we don't even know what happened to Ben Davies, the Preston North End man.
Yeah, what happened? I was like, what happened to that guy? I don't know. He made that one appearance against Brighton, right, and then just never returned.
I think he's just on the practice squad. He's just taking a spot on the bench. But for me, I don't know. I think even with Fabinho as a possible center back as well at times, like that's already 5. So you got Joe Gomez, you got Van Dijk, you have Nathaniel Phillips, you have Matip, and then Fabinho could also be that 5th one. So it's like Kabak could be like the 6th person. And then we also have, Ben Davies and Reece Williams as well. So it's, I would say my money and not get Kabak. I just think he's good, but he's not good enough for the club.
Yeah, like Liverpool quality.
He's not Liverpool quality. He can play for, a mid-table team. Like I think if you slot him into a Crystal Palace, or if you slot him into like a Newcastle, he'd be okay. He can start for most games, but I don't think he should be playing for Liverpool. That's just my take.
No, that's a good take. I haven't watched enough of Liverpool to really analyze or really look at Kabak, but that's the same vibe I've been getting from a lot of fans on Twitter, Liverpool fans on Twitter, kind of like let's not keep Kabak and let's just go with what we have and go from there. But that is a good point. But yeah, Liverpool conceding a late equalizer again, so that's why Tyler is just like, we need to get a new center back, or we need to get our old ones back to not have
and then get a new striker. Jeez.
Yeah. So there are some troubles that are going on in Liverpool, but we'll see what happens next season where they can kind of retool and kind of go forward from there. But a top 4 match that we thought that was going to be game of the week was West Ham Chelsea. Ended up being a snooze fest where Chelsea won 1-0. And yeah, it was a very boring game, and nothing really happened in this game. It was a typical Chelsea 2-kill type of victory where it's set up shop, be very structured defensively, and then win. And that's what they did. Chelsea won, and it looks like Chelsea, with this win, have pretty much, I wouldn't say wrapped up top 4, but have put themselves in pole position to get one of the final top 4 places in the Premier League. It was a big win for them. And West Ham, these back-to-back losses, it pains me to say it, but it might be the end of the top 4 journey, the Champions League journey. These 2 back-to-back defeats have been crushing for their Champions League hopes.
Mm-hmm. And even for me, this whole weekend in itself, the games weren't that great, and it was a little rough to watch. But I mean, this Chelsea squad, this is their bread and butter under Tuchel right now, just winning ugly, just getting that 1-0 and then just set up shop. But I would say West Ham, they got a little unlucky because they got one of the most controversial red cards of the season, where Buendia, he cleared the ball, and when he swung his leg up, he cleared it to the other side of the pitch. But as it came down, a player was coming in to block the clearance, and then his foot landed on the other player, and he got a red card for that.
Yeah,
and a lot of players are saying the game's gone. Like literally, he got a red card
for. Lingard was like, I think he put on Instagram like VAR is BS in his end game, like after the full time whistle. Once everyone got back in the locker room, he literally said, "Disappointed with the result. PS VR is BS." Something like that.
I've been on the same train too. Like I'm not, a big supporter of either team. Like I'd say I like West Ham a little bit more than Chelsea, but even then, I kind of want both of them to get a draw so that Liverpool have an advantage. So, I mean, for this, it was just so. It was, textbook where it's like it could have been a red, but if you look at the context, it shouldn't have been a red because it literally, where was he going to put his foot? Like, where is he going to land? Is he supposed to just leave it hanging after he takes that big swing to clear the ball? It's like, what? That's not even natural. And it's like you should put your foot down to get balanced. Otherwise, it's just going to fall back. And ultimately, he just got really unlucky with the timing, and he got a red card for that. And that's a big drawback because Craig Dawson got the red card the week before, and then now another center back, Buendia, gets a red card. Cards. So it's a little unlucky for West Ham, but I think, as Yash said, this kind of momentum destroyer of just getting 2 losses in a row, it's going to be really hard for West Ham to bounce back. But luckily for West Ham, Liverpool aren't really doing too well right behind them. And, Tottenham, Everton are right behind Liverpool. Both of them are also not really doing too high either. Everton got a little lucky of their win, but we're going to talk about that in a bit. But, I think West Ham, if anything, they'll probably get Europa League this season, which is kind of sad to say.
But it's still a pretty big achievement. I think they got Europa League that Dimitri Payet season, and then that next season was absolutely awful. But hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully they can continue the momentum. But yeah, like we said, Chelsea pretty much punched their ticket for top 4. West Ham, unfortunately, the dream might be gone, but we'll see how it goes. As we've seen this entire Premier League season, things change on the dime, literally each and every week. But we wanted to move it over to Arsenal-Everton, and this game, Everton got a very, very lucky win, and it was essentially Bernd Leno made a horrible mistake in goal. I don't really know how to explain the mistake, that it was just a shocking mistake. And yeah, that was pretty much it. Nothing else happened in this game. It was a shocking Bernd Leno own goal that allowed Everton to win the game. And it was just one of those random games that Arsenal lose once again at home, but Everton picking up some points, trying to get the European spot. But the biggest news, I would say, coming out of Arsenal was before the game, there was a bunch of protests basically calling for owner Stan Kroenke to sell the club. Arsenal fans gathering in waves, holding up posters, holding up signs saying Stan Kroenke out, sell Arsenal, and everything like that. And it was making huge noise that you could literally hear the protests when the players were doing their pregame interviews. You could actually hear some of the protesting noise coming into the stadium. That's how loud and how crazy it was getting. And it led to a lot of discussion about, should Stan Kroenke sell the club? What's best for the club? And because of that, recently Spotify owner Daniel Elk, who is a boyhood Arsenal fan, has come out and actually has put together enough money to present to Stan Kroenke, basically in a way to kind of to get Stan Kroenke to sell the club to him, so then Daniel Elk can now be the new owner of Arsenal. Nothing is official. Obviously, nothing is officially on the table of an official offer. But from everything we've been seeing, that Stan Kroenke still doesn't want to sell. But it is big news that someone has publicly come out forward, actually having the money and going up to Stan Kroenke and putting together an offer. And it'll be interesting to see what happens, because Stan Kroenke has owned the club for a while, and he's not a selling man.
He's not a selling man, but also not a great owner. He's kind of more pro LA Rams than pro Arsenal. And he doesn't even, a lot of Arsenal fans are saying when Stan Kroenke bought the club, he didn't even know what colors they wore. He just literally bought it as an investment. Yeah. And Daniel Ek, in the meanwhile, he's, a huge billionaire. He's the owner of Spotify, worth like 3.2 billion net worth. And the team itself is worth like 2 billion. But I think Ek as a fan, or Daniel, I'm just gonna call him Daniel. Daniel as a fan is going to be a lot better for the club. He has a lot more support from even the alumni or former players of the team. Like you got Dennis Bergkamp, you have Patrick Vieira and Thierry Henry all supporting Daniel to take over the club. And with this growing protests and like derisiveness from the fans towards Stan Kroenke, maybe that'll incentivize them to sell, but it's really much someone, they have like the willing buyers. Just, I don't know if they have the power to just say, all right, Stan, you got to sell it now. Like, I don't know. It has to be his decision, I believe.
Yeah.
If I'm correct. So ultimately he can still just, be stubborn, take it to the chin and say, you know what, I'm just going to stick with the club. I don't care what anyone else thinks. I don't care if the fans hate me. And I mean, I don't know how I would personally deal with this. I would probably sell if I were Stan, because I wouldn't want all that negativity for the rest of my time. I'm an owner at Arsenal. And then you can just focus all your time on just the LA Rams and who knows what other clubs he owns. But, give it to Daniel, and then Daniel, he's already ready to go. You have a buyer. Literally it's a get out of jail free card, where it's just like, you've been in such a big mess, and then now you can finally get out, and you have someone who probably would do a better job than you.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I remember when they were having this discussion, Tim Howard brought up a point that he actually has played under a Stan Kroenke own team, which is the Colorado Rapids of the MLS. And obviously Tim Howard played there after he got done playing with Everton. But from Tim Howard's perspective, he actually mentioned that Stan Kroenke, people kind of have this false perspective on him, where Tim Howard said that even though he is more of a step back type of owner, kind of takes a step back and, lets the club kind of handle their business. Tim Howard basically said that Stan Kroenke does care about, the clubs that he owns. He does care about, making sure the club is doing well and seeing them succeed. He does actually care about that. And even though he may not be a very public facing owner in terms of showing up to the games, being, front and center of everything that he owns, Tim Howard was basically saying that he does care. And I thought that was interesting because I guess from a former player, he would have, I guess, an insight to how he's like as an owner, since he is a former player of one of his former teams that he owns. But I thought that was very interesting. Obviously Tim Howard is a former player. He has the merit of saying that, but I think as fans, I think a lot of fans do appreciate, especially, I think the disconnect is because Stan Kroenke and a lot of these American owners, when they come in and buy, the Premier League teams and the Premier League clubs, they don't have that connection to that team, because a lot of people that are fans of their teams in Europe, they have their connection because they are boyhood club. They supported it throughout their entire life. Their family were supporters. Their family have been going to games. And I think for them, they just want to see that an owner is front facing, acknowledges the club, cares about the club. And I think they just want to know that. They just want to know that they're appreciated and that they are cared for. And I think a lot of times with the American owners, you don't really see that. You kind of just see them, basically it looks like that they're just cashing off on the investment. But I think if fans got from owners a bit of sympathy and just a bit of like, hey, we hear you, we're trying our best, we want to do better. But if they don't see that, I think that's when fans get really frustrated, because they just want to know, they just want to basically be heard, be seen, and know that they are cared for by their owner.
Mm-hmm. And that's why you kind of see with this kind of scenario where for the other big six clubs in England that were part of like the Super League as well, you're not really seeing as much backlash compared to like, say, Arsenal for getting the owner out, because the Super League was just like the icing on the cake for why Arsenal fans wanted Stan Kroenke out. Like they originally wanted him out.
Glazers, there have been tons of Glazers protests. Like United fans want the Glazers out at all costs.
And then for Liverpool, at least, I feel like it's still kind of 50-50 split, where it's like you've seen John Henry and Fenway Sports Group do a decent job the past decade. As I said in the last episode, where we won trophies. We finally won trophies. We ended a lot of droughts under FSG, but at this time it just was not. It was not a good look. It was basically, as I said last week, it's like this is something that's unacceptable to do as an owner, just to like kind of be your own, make your own decision just for you and not really take the club into consideration. But at least for Arsenal's take, it's literally Arsenal fans would not be surprised by this. They're like, oh, wow, Of course he'd do this. It's like Stan Kroenke. And like we've even talked about Stan Kroenke before the Super League even happened. So it's like even we're not, immune to even talking about him. So I think this would be a big boost for Arsenal if they can get it done. But we'll just see. We'll just be keeping it on the taps in the meanwhile, because I don't think Stan's gonna be quick to sell. But things happen fast.
Yeah,
life comes at you fast.
we'll definitely keep an eye on this story, because it is very interesting that we have an actual buyer that wants to publicly has stated that he wants to buy the club. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But we wanted to quickly mention before we get into our previews of the game versus the Championship, 2 clubs have been officially been promoted to the Premier League, which are the 2 clubs that actually got relegated last season, were Norwich and Watford. They have been confirmed, and they will officially be going up next season into the Premier League. So seeing 2 clubs that got relegated last season back into the Premier League, it'll be nice. Watford always seem to be a really tough team to face. And Norwich, unfortunately, let's see if they can actually stay in the Premier League for more than a season before going down again. So it'll be a huge task, but it's nice to see like the 2 clubs that got relegated kind of use their resources to get back up in the Premier League. It's pretty nice.
It's kind of crazy how Norwich always finds a way to win the Championship and then go straight back down.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I don't know how they can keep doing that.
They're really consistent with it, and our key boys are back. We got Timo Pukki Party's back.
Yeah,
we got Buendia's back. Todd Cantwell's back.
Yep, he's back as well.
Should be a party.
And then for Watford, Sarr's back. Ismail
Sarr. You got Troy Deeney. You got Will Hughes. Ben Foster's back. I know it's last time I remember Watford in the Premier League. It was them destroying Liverpool, so I don't really have fond memories of them right now. But I'm glad to see these 2 in particular back. As always, I feel like these 2 are kind of interesting to have in the Premier League compared to, like, say, a West Brom. I don't know why, I just don't like West Brom in the Premier League. It's just never an interesting game. But for these 2, they can make it some interesting sometimes. And Norwich, they're going to be there for a season and then right back down. And then Watford, who knows? They're going to have 16 managers in the next 3 years. And then that chaos is back. So they're always a storyline, was what I'll say.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm excited, though, to see them back. They definitely have some nice players that will be nice to see back again. Definitely Pukki Party will be fun. Hopefully he can get the party started next season and score some goals. But it'll be interesting to see how they perform next season. But moving on to the preview section, there is one big game this weekend, like the Premier Pod rivalry, as we always say. But 2 of the other games that we kind of picked out, the first one was Burnley West Ham. Burnley had been picking up some form recently. They beat Wolves. I think it was 4-1. It was a crazy scoreline, something that you do not expect from a Burnley team. But West Ham, in that 2-game slump, lost another player to a red card. And because of that, I think Burnley at home, I think it will end up being a 1-1 draw. I think Burnley will be like a little tough, so I think they're going 1-1, going for a draw.
This is a preview that I kind of slotted into our rundown because Burnley are now in that relegation zone fight where Newcastle, they got some good form and then kind of jumped out of it, and now kind of put Burnley and Brighton in that little hot seat over there, just right above the drop zone. And they do have some leverage from Fulham by a whole 6 points, but like things can change. If Fulham go on a run, then they're in some squeaky bum time. But I think with being a good time to face West Ham right now, they're on kind of like a rough streak of just losing. So and just getting really unlucky. So I think that 1-1 is literally what I would have said. So I'm going to say 1-1 as well. Burnley at home at Turf Moor. Yeah, it's going to be kind of wild. But it's going to be a hard-fought match. We're going to see what's going to happen, but it's going to be a very physical match, 1-1.
Yeah, both calling draws there. And then we have Tottenham versus Sheffield. Sheffield picking up a surprising win, a very rare win in the Premier League against Brighton. And then Tottenham coming off that very disappointing loss in the EFL Cup final, all that turmoil surrounding the squad. I think there's going to be a little bit of a bounce back effort. Because I think there's just been so much negative energy that I think some positivity will be thrown at this match. But as we've seen with Tottenham, they just can't sustain it the full 90 minutes. And because of that, I'm actually going for another draw. I think Sheffield, I know they don't score a ton. I know they don't win a ton, but I think this game will actually finish 1-1 as well, because I just don't think Tottenham are in the right mental state to kind of hold out and pull out and grind out a victory at this point.
Oh, we're actually going to... I was going to say a 1-1 as well, mate, because Tottenham, I feel like for this scenario, Sheffield, they have nothing to play for. It's just pride. And clearly pride was enough to get them a victory last week. And Tottenham, meanwhile, they still have things to play for. They have a Europa League spot to play for, but they're just so sad. They're just so depressed. It's just like, how do you even come back? And it's just going to be even more depressing when they draw 1-1 to Sheffield. So I'm going to say 1-1. You know what? I'm just going to keep the trend rolling, because I think the next prediction...
Yeah, definitely the next one we cannot agree. There's no way.
Yes,
there's no way. But
2 1-1s in a row.
As we always say, it's the Premier Pod rivalry. It's the biggest game of the Premier podcast. It's Manchester United versus Liverpool, the historic rivalry. There was definitely a lot more buzz going into it during the first matchup of the season. I think that was when United were in first place and then Liverpool were still in the top 4. And it was that game that I think it ended up 0-0, right? The game ended up 0-0.
I believe 1-1. So, yes.
Was it 1-1 or 0-0?
It was a draw.
It was a draw for sure. And we always joke that we always hype this game up like to super crazy amounts, but it always ends up in a draw some sort of way. But this game I feel like is going to be a little bit different, because United have basically, I feel like, have locked up top 4, but I want to have that second place spot. I don't want to have, third or fourth place, because if you finish in second place, you have a more favorable draw when it comes to the Champions League group stage in terms of where you get drawn out of the hat. And Leicester City are not too far behind Manchester United. And Leicester City kind of have an easy game this weekend that they probably should win. So it's very important that United pick up a win against their most hated rival. So I'm going to go with a 2-1 win. I think we will concede, but I think the way United have been playing, they have found a way to win some of these big games, and they have some big game players like Bruno Fernandes, Edison Cavani, Paul Pogba that have recently started to show up a lot more during these big moments. So I'm going to go with a 2-1 Manchester United win against Liverpool.
For me, I'm going to say that this game, I don't see any reason why it'd be different from the typical scorelines that we'd see from this matchup. And based on what happened last weekend, just all the results, just 1-0, 1-1, 0-0. Even Manchester United, 0-0 against Leeds United. A Leeds United that concedes over 50 goals and also scores over 50 goals.
0-0.
It's 0-0. Like I was very shocked. I was very surprised that nothing was scored that game.
But United and Leeds have been some of the highest scoring. Mm-hmm. Or Leeds have conceded a bunch, and Manchester United have been one of the highest scoring Premier League teams this season. Still finished 0-0.
So I'm thinking, I said 1-1 for the other results. Hear me out. This is another 1-1.
Oh, no.
I think it's going to be a 1-1.
1-1s across the board for Tyler.
1-1s across the board. First time probably in Premier Pod history. I'm just saying 1-1 for every single scoreline. But I really think there's going to be more shots than just, one goal per team. But it's just the lack of finishing from Liverpool. And I feel like at times Ali's son can put the team on his back. At certain other games, he's kind of like Bert Leno, where he just makes some whack, error and then just leads to a goal. But I think in these certain games, I think he's going to step up. And more recently, he's kind of stepped up more to cover for Kabak. So I think it's going to be a 1-1. I think Trent might score, my guy. But it's going to be a very meh kind of game, in my opinion. I don't think it's going to be as high.
I'm hoping it's a hype, excited game. I hope the players bring the passion and energy to it, even though there are no fans. I really hope they both can kind of bring that energy to the game. It seems like Tyler froze for a little bit, but we're all back. We're good. But I hope it's an exciting 2-1 affair. I hope United pick up the victory, but Tyler's going for the 1-1 draw. But with that being the last game we previewed, that kind of wraps up episode 115 for us. As we always say, it will definitely help us out a lot. We definitely appreciate it if you could leave a rating on Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on that podcast platform, it definitely helps us shoot up the charts and helps us get noticed by other people. But also, if you don't want to leave a review, that's totally fine. Leaving any type of rating, but also sharing the podcast with your friend or anyone that you think would find this podcast helpful or enjoy Premier League soccer or any soccer talk, that's definitely appreciated. But even if you don't want to do that, just taking the time out of your day to listen is definitely worth it for us, and we definitely do appreciate it. You can also give us a follow and subscribe to us on our YouTube page at The Premier Pod, where you can find the video version of this podcast. You can also follow us on our social media pages, Twitter and Instagram, at The Premier Pod. Send us any questions that you would like for us to talk about on next week's episodes or any episode, and we'll definitely get back to you and respond. And send us any questions you have. But yeah, that kind of wraps up season 3, episode 115 for us. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. Thank you guys. Peace.
Peace.